Welcome to Three Nice Things. The podcast has decided we've been so mean to these movies, it's time to say three nice things. And you can find more about this show and others like it at our network's website, radiomeanwhile.com. Other shows on the network include Is It Classic, Does It Rock?, where we pick a band or artist and go through their discography album by album, track by track. There's Previously on X-Men, where we look back on X-Men comics, movies, shows, characters, and more. And 9021, Here We Go, a 90210 rewatch podcast. Share your thoughts on this and upcoming movies by following us on Facebook or Twitter at Nice Things Pod, and please rate, subscribe, and share this show on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. Today, we are talking about the 1994 film Street Fighter the movie. I'm Eric Mickles, known online as duskvstweak, and with me is the co-host of the All the Book Show and the 90210 Here We Go podcast,
That's right.
Nic Gunning. Also with us is Tom Quilfelt, community manager at Laced Records, which puts out video game soundtrack vinyl, and a member of the Kane and Rinse podcast crew. Tom.
Hi guys. There's a guy who runs Laced Records who kind of founded it about 5 years ago or something now. Okay. And his main the thing that got it kicked off was a Kickstarter for a game called a Kickstarter for a vinyl for the soundtrack to a game called Hotline Miami.
Oh yes,
which was this sort of incredibly popular indie hit,
right,
with a really synth wave and electronica and kind of instrumental hip hop soundtrack, and that blew up, and it kind of gave the opportunity to then make a label essentially and carry on going with indie projects and different games like No Man's Sky. And then just in the last 2 years, we've had the great opportunity to work with IP like Doom. So Doom 2016, yep. We put out this giant 4-disc box set, the music by Mick Gordon, which did really, really well. And this year has been insane. This year we've put out Bloodborne, Resident Evil 2, Devil May Cry 5. We just did Gears 5 digital Soundtrack. We did some Warhammer stuff. We did there's more. We just did Wolfenstein: The New Order, and Wolfenstein:
right.
The New Colossus, and there's even more to come. There's a huge thing to come just in a couple of weeks. So it's been a really, really busy year for the label.
Yeah.
Well, I want to put in a special request right now for the soundtrack to Echo the Dolphin. So if we could make that happen, I'd be very happy.
Well, actually, I mean, there's quite a few of these labels now. Our friends over at Data Discs have been doing the classic Sega stuff for the most part. They've been doing some amazing stuff. They just did they released orders for Sonic CD.
Oh, okay.
So I should imagine if I was a betting man, that they'd be the ones to get Echo.
Yes.
Well, it wouldn't have been a video game related podcast if Nick hadn't mentioned Echo the Dolphin at least once.
I'm contractually obligated to bring up Echo the Dolphin.
That's right.
So, yeah, I have to.
But we're not talking Echo the Dolphin today.
But I think we should.
No, I'm sorry. Today we're talking Street Fighter the movie.
All right.
This might surprise you, but Street Fighter the movie is based on the video game of the same name.
Yes.
Specifically the 1991 Street Fighter 2.
Super Street Fighter 2, really, because you got Cammy and the whole gang.
Yeah, the new challengers show up, except for Fei Long.
Yeah.
Fei Long is the only one who didn't make it in there.
The holdout.
So I guess he kind of dodged the bullet there.
Yeah.
So Street Fighter the movie was filmed on a budget of $35 million. And upon release, the movie went on to make $99 million worldwide, according to Box Office Mojo.
Okay.
At the time of recording, it has a critic score of 11% on Rotten Tomatoes.
That's high. I mean, that's good.
An audience score of 20%.
That's a kind crew.
So I gotta ask everybody.
Yeah.
In 1994, are you Street Fighter 2 fans, Nick?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
In 1994.
Yeah.
And you had a Sega, so were you playing it on the Sega then at home?
I was playing it on Sega Genesis, primarily as Cammy or M. Bison.
Okay.
Those were my go-to players.
Wow. Yeah. Different playstyles there.
Were you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Myself, I had it on Super Nintendo.
Okay.
I was too young. Well, I probably wasn't too young, but I didn't get to the arcades much as a kid. So I played it on Super Nintendo. I had to play Blanka a lot because he was a defensive character, and my mom was Chun-Li. So my only way to defend myself was to curl up in a ball and get all electrified, or play as Dalsim and just stretch across the stage. So those were usually my go-tos.
I have to commend you for not having any pretext about how uncool you were.
Yeah, well, I got beat by my mom a lot in Street Fighter 2.
Playing Street Fighter with your mom.
Yeah, well, I was 7 or
Okay.
6. Who knows? Tom, what about yourself? In '94, are you a Street Fighter 2 fan?
Well, it's actually bringing back memories. I've never thought of myself as a fighting game guy at all, apart from brief dalliances with Tekken 4 and Soul Blade way back. But I'm now remembering we did have the Mega Drive Street Fighter 2 Turbo.
One of the versions,
one of the versions, full Mega Drive. I don't think I had a main. I was 9 years old or something.
Right.
I was probably spamming it as much as anybody with any of the characters.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely zero skill. And I was one of those people who saw Street Fighter games in the arcade and would just love the animation. And then I'd step up to play and get absolutely hammered by anybody. Literally, the carpet would probably beat me at Street Fighter 2. So
I don't know if this was the same thing for the Sega, but I know the Super Nintendo Street Fighter game was a little bit slower than the arcade. So when I would play an arcade game, I wouldn't be able to do it at all because it was just a different speed.
Oh,
so
I don't remember a difference.
Okay, well,
I remember we had a single 6-button Mega Drive pad. So I think for some reason that gave us an advantage.
Oh, yeah.
If one were to get any good at all, that would give you an advantage.
Yeah. It would. Easier to punch and kick to transition between the two.
Yeah. So the summary of the movie, in case you have never seen the Street Fighter film from '94, we are going to spoil it. If there's anything to spoil.
To be fair, I think Jean-Claude Van Damme spoiled it long before we got to it.
The idea is that M. Bison has captured a whole bunch of civilians.
Yeah.
And he's holding them hostage. He wants, how much was it? It was in the 20 billion?
20 billion, is it?
20 billion. And he's in his country, Shadaloo.
Yeah.
And I guess having 20 hostages is enough to tell the world you want 20 billion. Like today, I guess I'm a little cynical. I'm like, well, those hostages are in trouble then.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Even by and it kind of punctures the Austin Powers gag about 20 billion, $1 million.
Yeah. So that's his goal, is just to get the money. He doesn't have any bigger plans, it seems. I mean, he wants world domination, but he wants the money first to do that.
Right.
And
well, he's got that city. He's got that kind of Hitler. Hitler and Albert Speer are poring over plans for New Berlin in this giant model. He's got that kind of reference in there where he's got this big city laid out.
Yeah.
Bisonopolis. Bisonopolis is the city.
Called. Yeah. And he's very concerned of where the food court is going to be in Bisonopolis.
This movie.
That was a great line. I had to make a note.
So Guile, who is the main character in this movie, he's going to save the hostages. He's like the AN is what they're called. I guess that's like a fictional stand-in for the UN.
Okay, I'm very confused from the start. Like, are we talking about countries here? I mean, it just feels like, is Guile just like a freedom fighter or is he like part of a... Are there governments involved?
Guile still has the U.S. flag tattooed on his arm.
Yeah.
So I imagine he's still U.S. military.
He sounds as American as apple pie, too.
But there are Japanese-speaking soldiers in the AN peacekeeping force. So I think it's an international force.
Okay, so it is. It's like an international group. Not like sanctioned by one specific government.
Right. I don't think this is like the U.S. handling it. This is... Okay. He's the AN military because he takes orders from the AN. Right. Whatever the AN is supposed to be, which I assume is just a stand-in for the UN.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's going to go and rescue them. But meanwhile, we're also following all these different storylines of all the different assorted members from Street Fighter 2 specifically. So Ken and Ryu are like, they're selling military hardware that doesn't work to crime lords, specifically Sagat and Vega. And then you have, so other characters are working for Bison. Some are teamed up with Guile. I guess the other main group would be Chun-Li and her two assistants, which are Belrog and E Honda.
Yeah.
She's a news reporter, but she's also out to kill M. Bison.
Right. She's got a vendetta.
She's got a vendetta because he killed her father. And so all these characters eventually come together to stop Bison in his giant James Bond villainous lair. There's a big fight between everybody, and then Guile and Bison duke it out, and the day is saved.
They sure do, yeah.
I mean, that's the gist. There's just so many different all the characters have their own little through lines, but it all is just like meet at the end of M. Bison's base.
Yeah, pretty much.
So
yeah, all roads lead to Bison.
But they actually reach the base like a quarter of the way through the film, don't they?
Yeah.
Like loads of the film is set there.
My wife and I were watching it, and she had to go, so we paused it, and Guile was getting into his boat to go to M. Bison. And I remember that always being like the beginning of the third act. That's 40 minutes into the movie of an hour and 40-minute movie.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they get there, and a lot of the action is just at that base. The sides are... Because, like, in Street Fighter 2, you kind of know who, like, the villains are. Because it's like, you know Bison is the villain, and then there's always, like, these 4 bosses that you have to get to. Mm-hmm. So I always assumed, like, Bison and those 4 cronies were the villains, and everybody else was just good guys. But in this, DJ and Zangief are working for Bison, and so's Dulcim. But Belrog is... This movie takes some liberties with the Street Fighter
Yes,
lore.
it's not true to the source material. I think we can all agree.
Yeah. No, I should also say, I'm not an expert.
Very little street fighting.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I don't think there's
Yeah.
a single fight that takes place on anything that could be considered a street.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
Not even like a cul-de-sac
No.
or like a small lane. It's
No.
just,
Yeah.
I would have settled for a parking lot, to be honest, but I just don't think
Outside, even outside like a shop
Yeah.
window. So it looks like Chun-Li's level.
Right, exactly.
I'm not really like up to date or well versed in Street Fighter lore when it comes to the games.
Okay.
But I know it gets super complicated and convoluted. Like I think in the games, Cammy is even like a clone of M. Bison.
Right? Yeah.
So all that stuff is kind of lost on me in general. But yeah, I was also just like, why isn't it just a movie about like a Street Fighter tournament?
Yeah.
None of the movies are ever about that. It seems like.
Yeah.
Nick, when did you see Street Fighter the first time?
I was trying to remember that because I saw it as like a teenager, an older teenager. I remember watching this movie and being thoroughly puzzled by it.
So not in '94 and not in theaters.
No, I didn't see it in theaters. No,
Okay.
I rented it, probably on VHS.
Right,
And watched it. Yeah.
you paid money?
I
Oh.
did. And as is my tradition when I guest star on Three Nice Things.
That's true.
I did read the novelization
Junior?
of this movie, the Junior novelization by Todd Strasser. I read that before I rewatched the movie, and I thought, oh, this will kind of straighten out what the plot is and where things are supposed to go. I read that book, and I still don't really know.
Okay.
But it starts, the novel starts, and probably the first 10 pages, it's like, and then Balrog did this, and then Ryu did this. It just goes through so fast, introducing every single, 15 characters. And I thought, oh, that's kind of bad writing, that's cheesy. And then the movie does the exact same
It's the
thing.
same
It's
thing,
like
sure.
this person, this person, this
Right.
person.
Okay.
So it was a rough read.
But you think
didn't clarify.
you were a teenager, and have you watched this since you were a teenager?
No.
Okay.
I watched the movie. I did see Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li in theaters.
Okay.
But as
Yeah.
an adult.
That's a future episode,
Yeah,
I'm sure.
definitely. But no, I would have watched this on tape as a teenager.
Right.
And then again just last week.
All right. Tom, what about yourself?
Yeah, I watched it last week for the very first time. My wife was... I watched it in bits. I wasn't able to watch it all in one go, so I was holding the baby and feeding the baby. He's 9 months old. And he was quite interested in what was going on. He probably thought it was high art.
Yeah.
And then my wife caught bits of it because she's a big Kylie fan. But she's a non-ironic fan of Kylie's 90s stuff and Neighbours, the Australian folk
Okay.
Neighbours from before that, and she doesn't like all the modern stuff when Kylie became good. So
Okay.
she was tickled by Kylie turning up.
So in '94, even though you own the game on the Sega, no interest in seeing the film.
I can't remember. You know, I think I watched quite a lot of stuff earlier than I should have done. Like, my dad let me watch Terminator 2 and Batman Returns and stuff quite young, but no, I don't remember. But it was only like a bullet dodged. It wasn't sort of intentional.
Right,
like I took one look at it and thought, well, that will be a waste of my entertainment watching time. So I'm definitely going to steer clear of that. It's just I never came on the radar.
Okay.
I have absolutely no memory of this being in theaters.
I didn't see it in theaters, but I remember seeing the commercials for it and being so excited.
Really?
So in '94, I would be 8. I'd be 8 years old in '94. Like, I remember being told, like, oh, the commercial was just on for that game you were just playing. I'm like, the Street Fighter? Because I had just played Street Fighter 2 probably that morning, and then I saw that commercial. So, like, it wasn't my first time playing it either, but, like, I had played a lot of Street Fighter 2. This was back when, like, you had like 1 or 2 games and that was all you had. So even though Street Fighter was a fighting game and I maybe wasn't great at it, I still just played it a whole bunch. I loved the characters and the game in general, so I was very excited. And I didn't have the quality control that I had then.
Yeah.
So I was excited, and so we rented this. I can't remember how much I liked the movie as a kid, but I know I watched it a few times. And like when I was a teenager at 14, I was reading that Nintendo history book called Game Over, and they talked about the Mario Brothers movie. So I had my mom rent both Mario and Street Fighter, and I watched them both. And I remember being less enthused with Street Fighter, the movie, and then maybe someone was watching it in college, and I saw bits and pieces. I'm like, I don't know. And then I watched it again for this podcast. And I should warn you guys now, I think the childhood enthusiasm came back full force. I might be pretty biased with this movie.
So you're a fan of this movie?
I don't know, but I had a fantastic time watching this movie.
Why don't you take your headphones off? Tom and I will handle the rest of the episode.
Well, I mean, look, enthusiastic ambivalence is high praise, really.
Yeah. I had a hard time coming up with my 3 nice things because I wanted them to be things that I thought were objectively nice. And I was like, I can't just come on like, I surprisingly liked it. But I had a good time. And like when it was over, I was just kind of like, I don't know. It kind of brought me back to that 8-year-old enthusiasm I had. And I think it's more just for the movie now and like how I felt about Street Fighter then than me watching it and being like, this is a quality film.
Okay, all right.
But I'll talk about it with my nice things, I guess, too.
Okay.
Usually we talk about actors who dodge the bullet when they do these movies. And outside the character Fei Long from Street Fighter 2, there aren't really any bullets dodged for this movies because Capcom always wanted Jean-Claude Van Damme as Guile, and they pushed for him. But Jean-Claude's $8 million payday and the cost for Raul Julia meant there was little left of the $35 million budget to get bigger actors.
Yeah, you see that.
So that's why everybody else is kind of a smaller... I guess a lot of them were either action stars or comedians. They just got what they could. Even though some of them, like Ryu, the actor who plays Ryu, he's gone on. He's still working. He has a new show on Netflix even that's like right on display. Raul Julia and... Jean-Claude Van Damme ate up that budget in a big way.
That's not all they ate
I mean,
up.
It's a cast full of people where it's like, hey, it's that guy.
Yeah.
But I think that's more in hindsight. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, watching it at the time, I think it would have been like, oh, hey, it's someone I don't know.
I think Ming Na, the woman who plays Chun-Li, was on ER at the time.
Yeah.
And she went on to be like in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
She's the voice of Mulan.
Yeah.
So she also has had a pretty good career. But yeah, at the time, not a lot left to spend on
And
bigger
I will
actors.
say for Ming Na, I think she's a pretty solid as Chun-Li. I think she does a pretty good job.
Well, do you guys know Simon Callow very well? So he plays the English kind of pencil pusher who comes
the one
along
who comes
and gets
is
it.
like, hey, Giles, you can't go in.
He's a very, very famous British theatre actor.
Okay.
And he was in one of the most successful films of all time, Four Weddings and a Funeral. He's a major part in that.
Okay.
He actually buys it in that. He's very famous here,
Right.
but I don't know how famous he is elsewhere.
The director, Stephen E. De Souza, he had written the screenplays for 48 Hours, Commando, The Running Man, and Die Hard 1 and 2.
Wow, that is patchy. Very.
Those were screenwriting credits. He hadn't directed yet. I believe Street Fighter's his first directing.
Okay.
His directing debut.
Yeah, but some of those are fantastic and incredibly influential, and some of them are terrible.
Well, 1994 was a tough year for him critically because he did Street Fighter, he wrote for Beverly Hills Cop 3, and he was responsible for the Flintstones movie.
Oh.
So some of those were big hit. Like Flintstones made a lot of money, but critically, it was not a loved film at the time.
I liked Flintstones.
Yeah, family-wise, I think it did okay, but critic-wise, I think they tore it up. So there's a lot about the troubled production of the film. Van Damme was at the height of his ego and a cocaine addiction at the time. Apparently, he was spending $100,000 a week on cocaine at the time of filming this. Raul Julia, he was suffering from stomach cancer at the time, and he didn't tell anybody about this. So when they came to see him after they cast him, he was much thinner and weaker than they had expected. And his failing health meant that many scenes had to be rearranged. So this meant the cast had less time for training, and they often had to learn their fight choreography on the day, which never goes well. I think that was a problem they even just had on the Iron Fist TV show.
It's possible that that's why there's so little fighting in the film.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm sure that would play a part.
The idea was that, okay, Raul Julia will film all his scenes first. Everyone can train during those 6 weeks. But then when they saw him, like, oh, he needs to be able to recover from some surgery, so we need to film all the fight scenes first. Kylie Minogue was cast because of pressure from the Australian Actors Guild, since most of the filming took place in Queensland, Australia.
Huh.
Now, unlike Nintendo with the Mario Brothers movie, Capcom was very hands-on. Since they were financing most of the budget themselves, they had a say on everything. Screen Rant suggests Guile was made the central figure because of a deal Capcom had made at the time with Hasbro and their ailing G.I. Joe line. And so Hasbro was maybe hoping the Street Fighter line of characters led by Military Guile would bring them back to the forefront of toys.
I was really puzzled by that because I've never thought of Guile as like a primary character. Like Kent Ryu, sure, but Guile was like the one nobody wanted to play as.
I don't think I played as Guile until after I saw the movie. I'm like, I guess I should be playing as Guile? It was confusing. I thought maybe the movie was right and he was the central figure, but it never... I guess I would have always said Ryu or Ken first, and then I had my favorites, and yeah, Guile was just...
He would have been at the bottom of the list. I would have been like, oh yeah, Guile, with his flat top.
Also, the game company pushed for Japanese actor Kenya Sawada to play Ryu, but the role had already been cast, and Sawada struggled with English. So the role of Captain Sawada was included to appease Capcom.
Interesting.
So I don't know if you noticed, like the character, the Japanese actor in the film, who's not based off of a video game character. He's the one who says somebody will have to be out of their mind to do this, and he's calling a lot of shots. He was a character created just for the movie because Capcom wanted the actor.
So wait, is his real name Sawada or his...
Yeah.
And his character name?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
De Souza told GamePro in 1994, before the movie had come out, that he did not want to shoehorn in elements from the game, which personally I guess didn't include Bison's bell, the arcade deck, or most of the characters' late film costumes. And the characters' video game powers and abilities might be introduced in a sequel.
Yeah, you don't get a ton of that. I think there's a lot of little like homages to some of the game moves and stuff. But yeah, there's Okay.
He also had to cut down the film completely. He told The Guardian in 2008, "I was confident I'd shot a PG-13 film," he says. "I had worked in TV for years, and the shows I did, like Knight Rider, were considered family entertainment. I knew my way around ratings. But a week before we turned the movie into the Motion Picture Association of America, there had been a school shooting. They gave it an R rating. I said, listen, we'll just have to cut back. So we took out any places where you saw blood, we submitted it again, and it was still an R. Now we started to take out some of the shots where impact was shown. I'm cutting away, cutting it back, and finally we handed in. They give it a G rating. That would have been the kiss of death. No teenager wants to see a G movie. So I had John Claude come in one day, and I added the line, 4 years of ROTC for this shit. That gave us back up to a PG-13.
Just the swear.
Just that one line. So technically, if you take out that line, you're watching a G-rated Street Fighter movie.
Wow.
And apparently many of the scenes that were removed had the character's signature moves from the games.
Jeez.
So like E Honda does his slapping, his fast punching at bits, but I guess like all the other cooler moves were cut out.
Weird move.
I looked it up. There's no like re-release. There's no like unedited, uncut release. So I'd actually be kind of interested in seeing that to see if like the action is a little bit better. I guess with Street Fighter, it was more kid-friendly than like Mortal Kombat, which, you know, they didn't care about getting an R rating.
Well, it's funny that you say that because as I was watching this the whole time, tonally it's so weird. And I kept thinking like, if Guile goes around the corner and one of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is there, that would feel totally right. You know what I mean? Like that would seem absolutely in line with how this movie
Raphael and Guile having a scene
absolutely,
together.
yeah. Like I don't think that would have been jarring in the slightest.
Yeah. While the movie was panned critically, it did make triple its budget back. And until Kung Fu Panda and The Expendables, Street Fighter was Jean-Claude Van Damme's second highest grossing movie ever, only behind Time Cop.
Oh.
And at the time, it made a lot of money from video rentals. You said you rented it, I rented it.
Yeah.
Apparently, and I'm not entirely sure if this is true, but it read it like it was, that for a little bit, it was exclusive to video rentals, the VHS. So you could only rent it.
Like you couldn't buy it, you could only rent it.
Right.
It feels like the kind of it feels like a rental movie.
Yeah,
Sure,
like
yeah,
back from that
absolutely
time, I can just remember my dad getting what we have in the UK. We have a kebab on a Friday night, and he'd come back with kebab and a terrible film from Blockbuster.
Yeah.
And this would have absolutely perfectly fit that bill.
Well, in '95, you're still going to the video store and you're probably still renting games. So you're like, oh, Street Fighter! I've just rented that game. Grab the movie. You know, it. Even just the name itself would probably just make it an instant pickup if you didn't know it. And Jean-Claude, I mean, he'd probably be popular enough. I mean, I was excited to rent it.
I mean, I loved Time Cop. I unapologetically love Time Cop.
That's a good film. I remember that being a quality,
Yeah.
And a sequel never materialized, and Van Damme actually turned down the role of Guile in the 2009 reboot Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li. He was the only actor from the original Street Fighter movie to be offered a return in, but he passed it. Apparently he thought his time as Guile was embarrassing enough. But enough of that. It's time to say our 3 nice things about this movie.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. Tom, you're our guest.
Okay.
Why don't you go first with your first nice thing about the Street Fighter movie?
Well, I have lots of nice things to say about this film.
Oh, great.
So the difficulty is picking what should go first, really.
Yeah.
I think, and I hope I don't mangle this, I think my favourite thing about this film is that it's still early 90s, but it's got a very diverse cast. It is, as far as I can see, it might have something to do with sort of being co-produced or produced by Capcom, a Japanese company.
Right, and they put their foot down about the characters and their origins, sure.
Yeah. So, and obviously the source material, by definition, we are fighting in different places all around the world. So to kind of betray that wouldn't really have worked. But we've got plenty of lady characters, plenty of people of color. And the film itself, the film itself feels very colourful as well, and it feels like towards the end we get the overriding message at the very end of the film is with this kind of fake UN force as well.
Right.
People from all around the world coming together to defeat this insane warlord, this sort of unequivocal bad guy. So yes, that feels like to me the sort of the most positive thing, certainly watching it from 2019. So yeah, I'd be curious to think what you guys thought about that.
It kind of goes with one of my nice things, in that that's something I also noticed, and it unfortunately still even stands out in 2019. But I was thinking like the X-Men movies should be also a very diverse cast, but those movies tend to get very just focused on like the older white men of Wolverine, Xavier, and Magneto. Whereas they should very much be like a bunch of diverse characters, all teaming up for the greater good. And here, Street Fighter, the movie is, with 11% on Rotten Tomato, kind of blowing a movie like X-Men out of the water with that. I mean, Raul Julia is Puerto Rican, and he's the he's the biggest name people think of besides Jean-Claude with this movie. And then a lot of this movie, I mean, you still have Ryu and Chun-Li as very like important characters.
And that thing is, because like what you're saying, Tom, I mean, given the time, it would not be that shocking if it was like, and Sandra Bullock as Chun-Li, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that would have been totally fine, like, for the time.
Especially,
and they didn't do that.
Yeah.
So.
Especially if they were like, well, it's a video game. We have to cast known actors.
Yeah.
But the only like white man in there is just Ken, which is basically how it is in the games too most of the time.
Ken is super white though.
Ken is
more on Ken in a minute.
Ken is making up for, I guess. They're like, it's very diverse, so let's get the whitest man we can to play Ken.
Ken was
I'm curious what nationality the guy who plays Zangief is. I'm just clicking. I mean, he's from Philadelphia, unfortunately.
Is he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Kylie Minogue's Australian.
I think some origins have changed. Like E Honda is Japanese, but he's a Japanese Hawaiian,
right?
In this movie. And I think the man who plays Sagat is Native American, but Sagat is from Taiwan.
Okay.
Taiwan in the game. So there's still some, but yeah, it's a very eclectic and diverse cast that other movies still aren't really doing today.
That's true. Yeah.
I wonder. Yeah, it has to be Capcom, I would think, because I can't imagine an American studio just being that inclusive in 1994.
Well, I mean, if they didn't have that much money left over for other actors, I mean, famously British actors, I don't know whether it's a recent thing or, I mean, you know, famously British actors get cast to play in American productions and TV and film because they're cheaper, and there's a perception that they're better as well, that they can do accents better, that they're you know, higher quality theatrical training and all of this kind of thing. I have no idea whether that stretches back to the 90s and indeed to this film. But
right, you seemed ready to go, Nick. What's your first?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't. This one seems unfair because I think we probably would all agree that Raul Julia is just fun in this.
It's
movie.
true. When I asked people to share a nice thing about this movie on Twitter or Facebook, I said bonus round. It doesn't include Raul Julia.
Yeah, seriously. So I don't think I can count that as my nice thing. But I thought Raul Julia was like some of the other movies that we've watched, like in Batman and Robin, for example. We talked about how Uma Thurman was just 100% understanding the kind of movie that she was in and playing to it. And I think Raul Julia does the exact same thing. Hits the ground running and is like, I'm going to be in big, as crazy as I can get.
Everything he says is either hilarious or it's huge.
Yeah. It's just massive, isn't it?
You know, I thought, as watching this, I thought he's playing it with the same, like, intensity and abandon that Christopher Lloyd plays in
Back to the Future.
Roger Rabbit.
Sure, yeah.
You know what I mean? He's just so big, and everything that he does is taking lines that I think if he was saying them very seriously would seem stupid. But when he delivers them, it's kind of like, yeah, okay.
The one that is shared around online a lot is the whole speech about how he's a god, and now, and then he quotes the Bible where he says, and he fell from heaven like lightning. Yeah. And like he knew he was
exquisite.
He knew he was dying. So it almost even reads like, if this is the last thing I ever say on screen, I'm gonna just give it everything. Apparently,
he leaves nothing on the table.
No, that's true.
He's all in.
He did the movie because his kids were a big fan of the game. Yeah. And he did a lot of his own stunts, even though he was, you know, suffering from cancer. And it impressed the crew because he had this very much like the show must go on mentality. So I think he was just like, I'm an actor. Right. I know what movie this is, but I'm gonna act like never before. Did you guys notice in the opening credits it said bison costume created by Marilyn Vance? Did you see that? I thought it was just such a weird credit. What does that mean? Who's she?
I have no idea.
Oh.
That's why I thought maybe one of you would have recognized it or it would have meant something. But no, it was in the opening credits with like director, producer, all bison costume created by Marilyn Vance. So I don't know. It must some deal somewhere said that had to be in there.
Wild.
Okay, so that doesn't count as my nice
All right,
thing.
so what's your nice thing then? Yeah, I didn't include Raul Julia either because I thought it's so obvious, but he is great.
My first one is an actor though, because I thought Ryu, the actor playing Ryu, I thought he just did a really solid job.
He's funny
too. He was pleasant to watch. Yeah. He was funny. I think that on the flip side of that, whoever was playing Ken, I thought that was some of the worst acting I've ever seen. I thought he was just so bad.
I think he was let down by script.
Oh, sure.
Some of the editing like lingered on him too long and made it look like a total douchebag.
He really did. Yeah, where Ryu just seemed like cool and interesting, and Ken just kind of seemed like he always had a bag of potato chips handy. You know what I mean?
I can see people being. I can see fans. I don't know what the discourse has been like on this film, but I can imagine people being very, very disappointed about Ken and Ryu, you know, being sort of morally grey characters to start out with, and also that they weren't the main, you know, essentially the main heroes to get more screen time. And definitely I can see a better film here still with that actor, with Ryu being a much bigger role.
Oh yeah,
sure.
Yeah, so he's my first thing.
Ryu, Ryu. He's because he gets the cage fight with Vega. That doesn't really last. It doesn't happen at all.
No, but it's the most like Street Fighter-y thing that happens. Yeah. You know, when you got a little bit of that.
And then he has the fight with Vega and Sagat.
Yeah,
and he gets some. I think I remember there being like some interesting or like entertaining moves in that scene. I remember liking that whole like 4-way fight scene a bit when I was a kid.
Yeah, see that's interesting. But with Van Damme, it's like there's not a surface in this movie that he doesn't want to kick. You know what I mean? Like everything he can. If there's something waist high, you know Jean-Claude Van Damme's gonna kick it.
All right, I'm just gonna say this was the third one I picked because I had my other two and I was having a hard time coming up with, you know, objective nice things, I thought. Because, again, I had a good time. I think I'll say I liked, design-wise, M. Bison's lair.
Oh, it's so classic. I mean, it's like Dr. No.
Yeah.
It's like a serious Bond vibe.
Apparently, De Souza pitched it as like a James Bond.
Oh, well.
Of course, yeah.
Mission accomplished,
Yeah,
De Souza.
he said James Bond, Star Wars, and maybe it was just an action film. Just like all these different things. And I think that James Bond villain base is done. But I actually think I've always kind of liked that base. I like Bison's weird floating desk that fits Dr. Robotnik more than M. Bison, but I always thought that was like cool, and it's everywhere too, like in the promos and everything. He's just on there yelling game over.
Well, to invoke Austin Powers again, it's a very Dr. Evil type lair.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's no lava, but there could be. We wouldn't have second guessed it.
That's true.
But I mean, he's got his
some of the scenery as well is exquisitely made, like in the laboratory where Blanca is being made. If you watch carefully when the doors are trying to open to like reveal Blanca, like one of them goes a little bit and the other one wobbles a bit. It's absolutely craftsmanship is
well, Guile had all the money.
You know, I think the problem is Bison bucks just don't go as far as they used to.
Yeah, not as much. But like the screen, that's all those monitors together. I always thought was cool, and it's also it's in this jungle. I just like the whole look of his base, his underground base, the outside of it. It looks it's entertaining to look at. Even just that where he keeps the hostages in that pit that he's going to release Blanca into. That's very dark.
And
he keeps his bell in there. He just keeps the Bison bell from the game. Why is that giant bell in his underground base? I love it, but
we can't move on from Bison's base without talking about the weird sex dungeon that he takes Chun-Li to. That has like the painted picture of Bison all majestically like on a horse, or the chandelier that is all like human bones.
The modern art in the background is absolutely hysterical. You can't really watch Austin Powers after this. If you take this film as a comedy, which it's not supposed to be, but it could be, it does make all of those gags first, doesn't it?
It really makes Austin Powers redundant. That whole scene I love too, because Chun-Li's just like, you came into my village, you killed, we fought back, you idiot, my father died defending that village. He's like, to me, it was Tuesday.
It was
good.
You saw that line, but you saw that line coming, 12 years before this film was made. It was so obvious. It was great.
When he runs into that like plexiglass safe room and they're banging on it, I was like, did that thing cost them like $15? I really felt like they are gonna break that thing if they don't stop.
Do you think E Honda's stopping Chun-Li from killing Bison? Because he yells Lee and she stops and then he gets away. I didn't understand that scene at all, because they all want to kill Bison.
I don't know.
All right.
I don't know.
And what happens to Dalsim's hair? There's so many things in this film.
Apparently, so he talked. The actor talked about this in an interview. There was supposed to be a scene where he pulls all his hair out. So they were going to put him in like a hair cap and everything, and he was just going to tear it all off. But they cut it out.
I figured it was some. There's so much like that in this film.
Yeah.
I guess he just maybe shaved it real quick.
Yeah, you kind of get the sense that the rough cut of this movie was like 4 hours and change.
All right, so Tom, what's your second nice thing about Street Fighter the movie?
I'm really, really torn. I've got at least three more.
All right.
One of them we covered a little bit. I don't know if I want to make it my main point, other than to say it's quite a funny film, and some of those one-liners like. Zangief's two absolute zingers. You got paid.
Oh, I love the you got paid.
And quick, change the channel. He's got some good gags. But I don't want to make that a whole point of mine.
But it is a good point though, because I think it succeeds as a comedy much more than it succeeds as an action film.
Well, you know what, Tom? I'll interrupt you real quick, because my second nice thing is, I think the movie's funny.
Okay.
I think it's a funny movie.
All right.
And I think it's intentionally funny at a lot of times. You were talking about how Ken annoyed you.
Yeah.
Ken has a line. Chun-Li and E Honda and Belrog, they get Ryu and Ken and explain the situation, and then they kick him out. And you hear Ken, as he's leaving, just go like, well, that was special. And it just cracks me up.
That's very 90s, too. That's a very 90s thing to say.
Jean-Claude has all those dumb lines that are like they're so stupid that they're funny. Maybe those are lessons, but like you're not saying like your ass is 6 months overdue and I'm here to collect without intending to be funny.
What about when Jean-Claude says the thing about you lost your balls? That was my favorite interaction right there.
But like DJ, he has that line where they think Guile's dead. He's like, "Hey, that's great news, boss." He's like, "Actually, I mourn," and DJ's just like, "Okay."
Yeah.
And then DJ's like sneaking away as M. Bison is giving this big speech. He's like, "I'm out of here."
Yeah.
And
when Bison's like if it's just we're gonna do this if it's just the two of us, and DJ's like, mm-mm.
Yeah, he's looking back.
That's a wrap on DJ.
There's
everyone.
the whole. You're right. There's the change the channel.
Food court gag. Yes.
You got paid. I think there's some legitimately funny lines in this movie, and I think if you look at it as like an action comedy, it succeeds so much more than as like a street fighter action film.
Is there a kaiju gag with Honda and Zangief on the Bisonopolis model?
I remember hating that as a kid,
funny.
but this time I liked it. I don't know why. A lot of the jokes they did actually landed better than I remembered them. It was just
the weapons bizarre. That whole scene, the way they set that up is hilarious.
They're having the gunfight and then Ken and Ryu just walk out in the middle of it.
Right.
Like there's some charisma in that comedy, and it had me laughing a lot more. It had my wife laughing, maybe in the other direction. Maybe she was laughing at it more than with it, but I was laughing with it a lot this time.
There's a game creator called Jennifer Chen who was the driving force behind the game Journey. Who said something on a podcast recently. He said when you take something away, you emphasize what's left, and I think the fact that they took out potentially some of the most violent imagery makes this film actually not feel nasty or gratuitous at all, which then elevates the comedy and makes it feel more goofy. I've decided on my second one.
All right, that was it. I had to stop it so he didn't feel guilty about not saying how funny it was.
So my second point is pretty much, I already said it during the first one, it's a really colourful film in terms of set and the costumes and the characters. It like genuine, like actual colour, like the AN soldiers.
Right.
You know what you want with your group of soldiers going into a military conflict is to have a bright blue hat, so that the enemy have really
just you want to be able to see them. Sure.
Yeah, exactly. Even though I don't think any of them get the quality of shooting of the bad guys with their endless AK-47 fire and not hit a goddamn thing is pretty.
Well, again, maybe that's connected to Hasbro's G.I. Joe line then too.
Well, I kind of wonder if it's at all a reaction to the Mario Brothers movie, which is like basically colorless. It feels like, you know what I mean? Like there's nothing to look at in that. So I wonder, like, if Capcom is saying, no, we want more involvement, and we want to like really make this look like it looks in the game, because they just succeed in that.
Yeah.
In the bazaar when they go to trade weapons, there's actually, I think there's a tank with like Christmas lights on it, like literally just coloured lights.
Yeah.
So I really thought that gave the film this goofy, cartoony warmth.
It certainly had that. Yeah.
Are there some Hawaiian shirts in there? Is it E Honda that's wearing some?
Part of me thinks he's not the only one wearing a Hawaiian.
I think there's a couple.
I have memory of multiple Hawaiian shirts. Maybe it's just E Honda, but
that felt good to me. That felt like any sort of, as a sort of a video game fan, thinking about, I don't know, corridor shooters of the noughties and early, the last 15 years or so. It's going back beyond that to something more colourful was fun. It was a good laugh.
Yeah, I agree. Well, so we sort of, for my second here, we kind of obliquely mentioned this when we were talking about the comedy, but I really genuinely liked Zangief's transition in the end, where he's like, I'm good now. You know what I mean? Like that whole thing where he's
very accepted very quickly by everybody.
Yeah, he's like holding up the door and everything, and people are running through, and then we get to like our big pose in the end.
He's technically a war criminal.
Yeah, right.
But Guile he turns his hand up so it's a thumbs up instead of the bison thumb.
But I just thought that was funny. I thought that worked well, like within the tone of the movie, and I just thought, that's a good moment. So Zangief coming to the light, I think, was a good moment.
That whole "you got paid" bit, that delivery, is so. I mean, he is played as like a dumb character, completely. I don't think he's supposed to be that
almost
dumb.
Ken dumb, but not quite.
he legitimately seems surprised to find out that Bison's the bad guy from DJ.
Yeah.
It didn't confuse me that Zangief was working for Bison, because Zangief always kind of scared me in the games because he's so big. And I think I saw like those red marks that were his muscles in the game. I think I always thought they were like blood. So I thought Zangief was just this big naked man covered in blood whose main move was just to crush my head.
Wowzer.
And so as a kid, he scared me. And so in this game,
You play this game with your mom?
so in this movie, I'm like, sure, he's a bad guy. I get it. Why not?
Yeah.
I'll say my last because I jumped the gun. I feel bad now. My last nice thing, it kind of plays into the whole diverse cast, but I really like the ensemble nature of not just like the cast but the movie, in that it's not just like we cast Jean-Claude Van Damme and so now everything is Guile and here's 3 other characters from Street Fighter. Like they get pretty much everybody into this movie and give them all something to do in kind of more, instead of like a beholden to the game, it's more of like a toy box situation. You dump out the characters and then you just pick the sides and the stories and everything. But I like how we're following all these different characters from, different points and how they all get to the middle. So I Ken and Ryu not being like those mercenary selling arms dealers kind of thing doesn't really play well with me, but like the fact that they're doing that, and then they meet Sagat and Vega, who then meet Bison, and how Chun-Li has her own motivations. Right. I liked it because it feels, also with the diversity, it feels just like a big ensemble picture. And again, I think I compare it to X-Men because like it has that same kind of like roster quality about it. How X-Men always just like picks like we're a Wolverine movie with other X-Men in it a lot of times, but Street Fighter's like, yeah, we got Jean-Claude Van Damme, but here's Ryu, here's Ken, here's Zangief. DJ gets more lines than, you would expect. So
I kind of wonder, like, knowing what we do about the film, that so much had to be cut to get that rating down. If you've ever seen a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, you know that he is like 90% action. Right. So if they're cutting out violence, they probably had to cut out a lot
If you cut out 20 minutes of action, you cut out 20 minutes of Jean-Claude.
I think that probably is true, and the ensemble is raised because of that. To Tom's point earlier, I think that's probably a lot of that.
But, as a kid, when I was watching this the first time, it wasn't me watching it with like, I didn't know much about the story of Street Fighter, so I was just watching it and being like, that's Ryu, that's Ken, that's Vega, and being excited just to see them. Right. And now watching
Vega looks pretty cool.
Vega's look
Vegas
looks cool, though he gets beaten pretty quick. And it almost seems like his claws are a hindrance in his stance. Yeah. Especially that bamboo claw thing he makes that doesn't work. But I guess even watching it now, it's still just kind of like a quick tour through, they get some of the characters wrong, but a quick tour through the Street Fighter 2 cast, and it's fun. I like seeing it. It's almost kind of like, watching it now, it's kind of like going to a high school reunion. Like, Ken, how's it going? Still kind of a goofball. Hey, Blanca.
They get like you already said, I think I stopped the film, and within 9 minutes of the start of the film, they'd introduced pretty much like
everybody.
Every single character.
Yep.
And if you got a big board on the wall of how you're going to put this story together, and you've got the top point is like, right, the end, they're all standing together. So and then you've got all these strings kind of fanning outwards in a pyramid. Like, how do we get everybody to that one point? Right. And it took, Avengers Endgame is the result of how many hours of cinematic world building and stuff. So, it's literally a whole day of like getting to that point. So just having a 1 hour 40 movie and just trying to cram everybody to the right place.
And I think like as a kid, and it was fun seeing like, oh, Dalsim is the scientist working on Blanca, and Blanca's
how they connect.
Right. Yeah. So it's one of those things where some people disagree with me, but I almost wonder if you take out Street Fighter the name and change the character's name, do we kind of watch this? Does it have a higher reputation because it's not based off of... Maybe not. Maybe people would still think it's bad.
I would say a hard no on that one.
But I liked how it does feel more like an ensemble Street Fighter, and everybody's getting in there.
It feels like an ensemble, but to me the biggest problem is it never feels like a Street Fighter. Yeah. You know what I mean? You just don't get that vibe. It's hardly an action movie. Right.
Yeah, Mortal Kombat has all those, like, the one-on-one fights from Mortal Kombat. Yeah. Whereas in Street Fighter, it's just like... They're all together all the time.
Yeah, all you really get is Guile and Bison. I mean, that's the only thing that's even close to the game.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a buddy in many ways, though. It's a just a buddy action movie,
Yeah.
just a sort of late 80s, early
Yeah.
90s buddy action movie. That's what this guy was writing anyway.
It's a 16 person buddy film.
Right.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, you've got all the different pairings and stuff, the little distinct groups.
Yeah, it's Street Fighter by way of Police Academy, I guess. All right, so Tom, what's your third and final nice thing about Street Fighter the movie?
You guys nearly tripped over it, and hopefully my wife doesn't overhear this from the other room. But my third and final thing is that Vega, Jay Tavar, is beautiful.
Yeah,
he's just a beautiful man.
They definitely got that right for somebody who's always saying
his face is beautiful, but his body, his muscles are just incredible. He's a stunning man. He's a terrible fighter in this film.
Yes,
he's almost completely redundant as a character, but he just looks. He's just stunning. He's just one of these. I don't know. He lit up the screen for me. Just those
specimen.
Definition of those. Yeah, absolutely, an absolute specimen.
If you were going to commission like a Jim Lee drawing of Vega, it would be this guy.
Yeah, because Vega is just known for being like the vain Street Fighter.
Yeah.
He's always thanking you for, is it a gorgeous time or a beautiful time
Something
if he
like
wins?
that.
He's always like, thank you for a gorgeous time or a beautiful time.
Yeah.
And
he probably thinks this game is about him.
yeah, no kidding. But yeah, he's always like, he always takes off the mask so you can see how beautiful he is.
Yeah.
And like, they definitely got a guy that like, you would believe
they were like,
still has
casting
that.
call was just pretty man.
Yeah, yeah. He. I thought that too. I was like, they really nailed the look. He doesn't wear the mask too much, but even just like when he
the
wearing
tattoo,
the
metal thing. I mean, it's he's just right. He's just right.
Which is good because Vega is like a cool looking design because it borders, it has, you know, the mask and the claws, like that's it, and then it's just the shirtless guy.
Right.
But I always thought like Vega looked very cool, and he was so tough in the game because he's so fast.
Yeah, you got to knock those claws off. That's the key.
That's
the key in Super Street Fighter 2.
Yeah, but yeah, he's a good looking guy. I looked up to see if he has done much. I don't think he like a big career.
He doesn't have to do much.
Well, for video game players, they might recognize his voice from hours of utterly weird and convoluted tapes as Code Talker from Metal Gear Solid 5. I think he must have been in the Phantom Pain. Yeah, he was. Yeah, Code Talker in the Phantom Pain. So he's this, you know, this old guy. That game has a completely broken narrative. I love it. It's amazing, but the characters and the script and the whole way it's put together is very odd for various reasons. But if you collect all the tapes and you hear about how there's this stuff about this virus that transmits through language, it's very, very strange. But he does these hours-long kind of tapes that you listen to in the background as you. So that's
he doesn't talk much in this. Does he have any lines? It's all just smoldering stares.
Yeah.
Okay. Wes Strudi. I don't think any of us are going to mention. I might be saying his last name wrong. The man who plays Sagat.
Okay.
I think he also kind of hams it up in the same way M. Bison does in a pretty successful way.
Yeah, he's
good.
He
when he says something like "all that's left is revenge," I'm like, that guy believes it.
Yeah.
He believes it. So I like the Sagat Vega combo.
Okay.
That makes a lot of sense to me as a kid. I was like, sure, these are all bad guys. So apparently a scene that was cut was he was going to be killed by being impaled with his own claws.
Oh.
And so they cut that out. So instead he kind of gets burnt on the furnace, which to me seems extreme too.
It's pretty bad.
To push a man's face into a fiery furnace, I'm like, no thank you.
Yeah.
I guess he just gets singed.
I guess.
So, because he's not at the... He's not there at the end of the movie.
That's
After
true.
the base blows
Yeah.
up, it's Sagat and DJ.
Yeah.
Your final nice thing, go ahead.
Yes. Mine is Ken related, if you can believe it or not.
What?
Because
You've been tearing Ken apart.
I know that, but I thought Ken had a really good sort of final line to Sagat. Do you remember this? Ken says, I owe you a favor because if I hadn't met you, I might have become you.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really solid line.
Yeah.
That was a good ending line,
Yeah.
a good moment
Stay
for
in
those
school.
two characters.
Yes, stay in school.
Don't do
Exactly.
drugs.
Exactly.
Don't sell Nerf
Don't sell
guns
guns.
pretending they were
Yeah.
real guns.
Yeah, but I thought he sold it in that line, and it was, it's a good. It's not like it's a new line, but it's still a good line, a good delivery.
Yeah, I still kind of like the Ken Ryu combo in this movie. I mean, you've been pretty much against Ken this whole movie, but
Yes.
I think maybe his dopiness, because Ryu and him aren't being played as these like warriors looking
Right.
for the next fight. With the way they downplayed that with Ryu, him and Ken kind of do have this nice buddy routine that I think works. I'm not entirely sold that they've been friends forever, but I like how like Ken is like, I'm out of here, but then he has to go back to save Ryu.
I could
save Ryu, but, help him out.
I could see that breakdown working. That Ryu's more serious and Ken's more dopey. I just didn't think they really had any chemistry, and I thought that I just don't think that Ken sold it at all.
Okay.
But he was good in that line, which is my final nice thing.
I would have become you. Yeah. All right, Tom. Are there any? You said you had a list. Are there any nice things you want to get out before we get to comments?
I think I managed to slip them all in, actually, to be honest. Apart from the hair game is pretty on point.
Yeah.
I think Ginger Van Damme, kind of works for me. There's some decent hairstyling throughout the rest of the film.
A lot of product in that hair, though. Yeah. A lot of product in Kyle's hair.
Yeah. Speaking, there's that line about hair where Chun-Li's like, pigtails really? To Cammy, and then she's like, look who's talking, and Chun-Li remembers that she has those buns in her hair. She's like, ah.
Yeah.
It's played funny. I don't know. It seems catty for the two of them to do that.
Yeah.
It also kind of seems like, we have two ladies. They have to make a joke about each other's hair kind of thing. But I think Ming-Na plays that scene pretty well.
Yeah, she does.
Is Kylie Minogue good?
No, she's terrible in this
Okay,
film.
she is bad. Thank you.
She's a pop singer. By this point, she's acted on one of the well-known for being one of the cheesiest soaps of all time, Neighbours, which is this. I don't know if do you guys know Neighbours?
I know of it.
I listen to some Australian podcasts and they always mention it. So I've heard his
famously long-running for decades. This Australian soap that used to be huge in the UK as well. My wife used to absolutely love it and love Kylie, but it is excruciatingly bad. It is as soapy as you possibly. It's like I don't really know US soaps that much. I just know US soaps by way of Joey and Friends and kind of.
Sure, yeah.
My wife used to love Sunset Beach as well.
Speaking of Joey, DJ.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's true.
DJ goes on to play in Joey, right?
Yeah, in the Joey spin-off, the guy who plays DJ plays Joey's best friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Kylie, she's a singer. She's a pop singer. Yeah. She's a terrible soap actress. Then she's an internationally famous pop singer.
Right.
And that's pretty much what she was capable of after that, I think.
Apparently, he said that after, the Australian Actors Guild pushed for them to cast somebody, and he had found her, on a magazine and read an interview with her and everything, Cammy was the only character they hadn't cast. So she got it by way of, happenstance, I guess.
I guess so, yeah.
Apparently she was very nice on set. Everybody was having a hard time, so she rented out a club and paid for everybody's drinks.
Oh,
so
that's nice.
I heard she seemed like a very nice person.
Okay.
Meanwhile, Jean-Claude Van Damme won't come out of his trailer. He's snorting $100,000 worth of coke. He's repeating scenes because he thinks he got the lines wrong when he didn't. All right, well, we do have some comments. You can find us at Nice Things Pod on Twitter. Usually we just say one nice thing. Sometimes people take up the challenge and come up with 3 nice things on their own. But we got, let's see, Nightcrest Comic wrote 3 nice things. Every scene with Raul Julia
Agreed.
is true. And especially because they're doing that, that M. Bison who's into, his own branding so much. Bison Bucks, the Bison Food Court. It's such a ridiculous character that does seem
It's kind of Donald Trumpy, though.
Yeah. Boy, so maybe Street Fighter is...
Great, now I'm depressed.
Sorry.
Number 2 from Nightcrest Comic was great to see a large variety of nationalities in one movie.
Wait, is one of us Nightcrest Comics? Because these are all...
The third one,
on the money.
Yeah.
The third one was they gave the game a story to follow throughout the series, and then bonus round, they said the guy who played Zangief was awesome.
Yeah, okay. I mean, we got to get this guy on the show, I think.
I was complaining because I couldn't remember. I was like, this Zangief he's not wearing, everybody's in their costumes. Zangief's just not walking around in his red underwear.
Right,
But there it was. Please 12 says... Kylie Minogue's Cammy is actually pretty good. Well, maybe we shouldn't have just...
Oh, I don't know about that.
Disagree, please.
The whole thing is ridiculous, and that breeds its own charm, which I agree with.
All right, I mean, there's something to that.
Breeds its own charm. That is a brilliant way of talking about...
Nice going.
Good, bad film. Good.
At Silver Zio says, the change the channel scene was a good joke.
Yes.
And Emperor Skunk says, the quick change the channel scene is the greatest thing ever.
Okay, so that's important.
And Hey DDD Sweets says, I should have stayed at Microsoft, which is one of the DJ lines. At Hubert Hyena says, quick, change the channel.
Yeah.
You lost your balls.
Yeah, that's classic.
E. Honda's torture scene, I guess where he says like his mind is one place, his body another. Wow, they threw in a lot of nice things. 4, Ming-Na Wen was a good choice for Chun-Li.
Yeah.
And I think she can leave the movie with her head held up high. I think she's charming. I think she has some funny moments. And I think even though they cut out a lot of the fight scenes, and I think she can do those fight scenes herself. I think she kind of portrays that, and still more enjoyable than the film Legend of Chun-Li.
I don't know if I agree with that, because Legend of Chun-Li is so bad, but it's very like charismatically bad to the point that you're kind of like, let's see what they got.
Yeah,
let's see what they're gonna bring.
And finally, at Sir Ben Kenobi says, very faithful to the video game. That doesn't seem right, but let's see, adding in most, if not all, characters from the video game, and then creating an original story and some brilliantly cheesy dialogue. This is a fun piece of entertainment.
Okay.
The director in, I think, the Guardian interview was saying they knew they were saying silly lines. They knew, like, it wasn't them saying lines and then we think it's stupid that they didn't realize how dumb it was. They knew they were writing lines that say, like, your butt is overdue. And, and Jean-Claude doing that interview where he's like, take a look at this.
Yeah.
So look at, and all the...
Can I just say, I still don't understand the point of pretending that Guile was shot. I guess just to fool Sagat, but I don't... To
fool Sagat and Vega, but he stays dead too long for it to make sense.
I just don't understand. And then we haven't talked at all about Blanca and how stupid he was.
Yeah.
Or the fact that when he has Charlie, before he's turned into Blanca, and they're doing the thing where they're talking to each other on live TV, like it's TRL, Guile says, like, don't worry, Charlie, we'll come save you. And then M. Bison's like, oh, so this is an important person. It's like...
In a way, though, he saved his life because... Bison was making all the soldiers fight him and then killing them.
All right.
So if you think Charlie could have killed Bison, then yes, Guile ruined everything. So
I'm just saying he really put Charlie like under fire by saying that's an important guy.
Yeah.
Is Blanca the weakest link in the film, apart from Kylie Minogue's acting? Is character-wise, is Blanca the weakest link?
I think so.
Props to the movie for including, like, the strangest character in the Street Fighter games in the movie. But then, coming up with this, like, super soldier kind of plot line. I always thought, like, that doesn't seem right. Because I think I always knew he was, like, orphaned in Brazil and raised as an orphan there. But then, like, he doesn't really do anything.
I think if he would have just been there and looked better, and they were just like, he's a product of genetic manipulation. The end.
Yeah.
I think that would have made a lot more sense than watching him turn into Lou Ferrigno's Hulk.
I did quite enjoy the video thing of them switching between like the bad brainwashing imagery and the good kind of everything's lovely imagery.
Yeah, he watched a few episodes of Neighbours, I think, if I recall right.
Neighbours is brutal.
Yeah, that
was the torture side. Yeah.
Dulcim as well. The guy who played Dulcim was like, I just went into autopilot mode. They tell me what to do. I did it. That was it. He kind of realized what movie he was in.
Okay.
Pretty quick. Also, and apparently the...
we just can't stop. We can't stop.
In the torture scenes where they're feeding all that info to Blanca, apparently there's a scene of a real person being shot.
Really?
That, like, it's real footage.
Oh.
From the news or something, and they just threw it in. So, like, that's a pretty dark element of the film.
Questionable, yeah.
That's as nice as we should be on this episode.
We stopped being nice about 10 minutes ago.
I gotta ask then, Nick, are you ever going to watch this movie again?
And no.
No, so this viewing has not changed it for you?
No, I don't like it. I don't want to watch it.
You didn't like it at all? Nothing, okay.
I mean, I think it was just tonally so weird. It was just like, are you trying to be an action movie or trying to be a comedy? And I just didn't...
Did it make you want to play Street Fighter?
I always want to play Street Fighter.
Okay. Tom, what about yourself? Would you ever watch this movie? I mean, this was the first time you watched it. How do you feel? Did the movie earn its horrible reputation? I mean, 2014, it's 15 years old. Yeah. No, it's 25.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, well, happy anniversary.
It's a tiny bit of background. A buddy and I, about 6 years ago, made a bet to watch all of the Resident Evil movies. Hey. And it took us so long to kind of make appointments to watch each one. It took us 6 years to watch all of those films. And those films started bad and kind of fun bad, and then just got worse into just bad.
Right.
And then when we finished the final one, we were like, okay, what are we going to do now? Okay, we're going to have to go back and watch all the video game movies.
Right. Oh.
So we were planning to start roughly around Super Mario Brothers, which I haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah.
And then this would have been on that road. And then I texted him one day and said, you know what? I don't want to watch these terrible films anymore. Can't we just watch films that influenced video games, like The Running Man, things like that, and get a bit deeper with it? And because I don't know how many of these terrible films I can watch, and I still, Street Fighter has completely kept my mind exactly the same on that, which is to say that I won't watch this again. I don't think I'm going to watch any of these terrible video game movies again.
Well, except
I remember
we all have to reunite for Legend of Chun-Li when we do that. That's a blood pact.
See, I didn't even know that existed.
Oh, yeah, it has Kristen Kreuk from the show Smallville as Chun-Li.
Yep.
Okay.
And
she's
Michael McDonough. Am I saying that right?
Yeah. Neil McDonough.
Neil McDonough as M. Bison.
Yeah.
So, and I think he plays him as an Irish.
He is. He's an
Irish
incredibly
M. Bison
Irish in that movie.
So, but this film, I mean, it's a terrible film.
Yep.
It's wonky. It's really wonky in the way that just watching these Resident Evil films just gone. I mean, the flow's not there. It's not a compelling story.
No.
Stuff comes in that shouldn't be there, and some scenes are too long, some scenes are too short, some scenes don't make any sense. Some of the dialogue is excruciatingly bad, as is the acting, as is the convoluted reasons for why any of these people are in any one place at any given time.
Right.
I had fun on this viewing. I didn't feel like it dragged. It reminded me of like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
There you go.
Exactly what I said. Secret of the Ooze, all the way.
Yeah, exactly. It took me back to that time.
To the early 90s of action kid films almost,
So I'm thankful for that. I'm grateful for that. I'm never going to touch this movie again, unless someone else...
If somebody's trying to turn you into Blanca.
Yeah, then maybe...
then it's force-fed into your view, Listen, guys, I am biased. I had a great time rewatching this movie. I thought I wasn't gonna like it because when I rewatched Mario, I was so surprised how much worse it was than I remembered. This one, I laughed. I had a fun time watching it. It put me in such a good mood.
Wow.
It didn't necessarily. It kind of put me in a Street Fighter mood, but anytime I watch or read anything about Street Fighter, I'm like, let's Street Fighter now. This might be too personal. At the end of the movie, where they turned and like did their battle stances, everything, and it was over, I don't know if it was allergies, but my eyes were watering, and I don't know if the movie just teleported me back to like 7 or 8 years old, and maybe that's the best thing I could say about the movie, that like I felt the same enthusiasm. But no, I see.
Let's hope it was allergies.
Listen, I get it, because like when I tried to come up with the nice things, I was like, I don't know. But I think Raul Julia's crazy performance and whatever Jean-Claude Van Damme's Guile is about and everything, part of me's like, maybe I better buy this movie on Blu-ray so I just have it. I don't know. Yeah, maybe it's a Stockholm Syndrome.
I think it is.
But this, I had such a strange surprise watching this.
All right.
I had a good time. I'm kind of shocked the audience score is still 20%, because I thought maybe like over time people would be like, oh, it's so bad it's good. But no, it has not changed. So I get it. It is a bad movie. There's things about it I like. I won't expect anybody else to like it, but I had a good time.
I think a group of friends the right age with plenty of alcohol sitting around talking over it.
Yeah.
That could be a good time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks to Nick Gunning and Tom Quillfelt for watching this movie with me. Thanks for watching it and coming up with your nice things.
Well, you're not welcome. I'll tell you that.
Nick, where can people find you?
Well, if this stoked the 90s nostalgia in you, you could come over to 9021 Here We Go with me and Kendra, where we're watching through the classic Beverly Hills 90210 series.
What episode are you recording next?
Next, we're talking about episodes 4 and 5, I think.
Okay.
Yep. So you can find us there. I co-host the All the Book Show with Eric. You can find us on Twitter at the All the Book Show, and on Twitter I'm just Nick Gunning.
Yeah,
Nice
we
and
talked
simple.
Street Fighter a little bit too on our old video game.
We can't help
our
it.
Sega versus Super Nintendo one. Yeah.
Yep.
And Tom, where can people find you?
I think people, because my surname is so difficult to spell, I think people are going to have to find me through other things, which is to say that Laced Records on Twitter is at laced_records, or just lacedrecords.com is maybe a really much easier way to do it. And we're on Facebook, Instagram. I run the social media. I also write a blog about video game music for Laced Records, which you can find through the site, called Laced with, or sort of subtitled Laced with Wax. And we interview people. We do stupid listicles, the best underwater music from video games, that kind of thing.
Echo the Dolphin.
Did make it? Did Echo? Must have done, but like
I think so.
One of the Sega CD, maybe one of the later ones.
Yeah,
Tides of Time, maybe.
I can't. Tim Follin, fantastic composer. Anyway, And then Cane and Rinse, which is a podcast crew that's been going for about 7 or 8 years now, hundreds and hundreds of shows.
Yep.
Cane and Rinse reviews games, video games. We try and make sure they're at least 6 months old before we review them, so it's outside of the hype cycle. And we take quite a careful and studied approach to how we break it down and go through each element of the game and try and avoid hyperbole and
I think I heard you fall into some of that. Was it the Final Fantasy VII
that's
episode where you said the theme was the greatest piece of music ever, and Leon held you back a little bit.
Down.
Yeah.
He hates it. We have constant fights on the Slack about that. I'm the joke. The running gag is now that I'm the this is the best thing ever. But to be fair, Final Fantasy VII is there's a little tattoo of it next to my heart, so not literally. So it's difficult on that one, but so we sort of announce a year in advance what's coming up. We call them volumes, editions and volumes. So at the moment this year we've been doing all the Final Fantasy games, but a ton of other stuff. The episodes stretch back for years. You definitely find your favourite games and series and stuff from the arcade, and score attack games and fighting games and Soulsborne games and every type of game there is really games. And we also have a video game music show called Sound of Play, which on a regular week is a jukebox show where we just pick, good stuff that comes from forum recommendations, all sorts of things. Or sometimes I do, or some of the others do, interviews with video game composers. So, do check us out, caneandrinse.com. And you'll find me through those things, probably.
I just talked about it on all the books. We just talked, because it was International Podcast Day, so we talked about favorite podcasts. I just talked about Cane and Rinse and Sound of Play.
Yeah, you did. Whole
over
feature
all
on
the
it.
books. Nick was in the car listening to Sound of Play without knowing it a couple days ago. So
good stuff. Thanks very much.
Yeah. And I'm duskvstweak everywhere online. Apart from other shows on the Radio Meanwhile Network, I'm the co-host of the podcast, The All the Books Show. Thank you to Prophetic Music for our theme song. Join us in upcoming episodes as we say more nice things about bad movies. Again, you can find more about this show and others like it at the network's website, radiomeanwhile.com. Please follow us on Facebook or Twitter at Nice Things Pod. Please rate, subscribe, and share this show on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. See you next episode.
3 nice